I came from Hollywood, and that wasn't Henry's upbringing. And even with Happy Days, even with the broad comedy that we were going for, he was looking for those other values.
When Happy Days first hit television, Ron Howard was the golden boy of the show. He was the heart, the charm, and the clean-cut face audiences instantly trusted. But behind the perfect smiles and 1950s nostalgia, something changed. Fame was no longer enough. The set that once felt like home started to feel like a cage. And the role that made him beloved began to box him in. So, what exactly happened that pushed Ron Howard, the show's most wholesome star, to walk away from one of the biggest hits on TV? Stick around because the truth behind his sudden exit is far more complicated than anyone realized. The boy who grew up on screen. Before he became the man calling the shots behind the camera, the director behind Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, and The Da Vinci Code, Ron Howard was simply America's favorite redhead. That familiar grin, that soft-spoken charm. He wasn't just an actor. He was part of America's living room. From the small-town simplicity of the Andy Griffith Show to the jukebox glow of Happy Days, Ron didn't just play in the limelight. He grew up in it. But when fame comes knocking before you even lose your baby teeth, it doesn't just mold your life, it rewires it. Ronald William Howard entered the world on March 1 St. 1954 in Duncan, Oklahoma. He was the firstborn son of Rance Howard and Jean Spiegel, both dreamers with Hollywood in their blood. Acting wasn't something Ron stumbled into. It was practically inherited. His father, Rance, was just an actor, but a director and writer. The kind of man who understood the grind. His mother, Jean, lit up the screen in her own right, balancing artistry with motherhood. The Howards weren't just raising a child. They were building a legacy. And interestingly, even their last name had its own story. Rance was born with the surname Beckenholt. But like so many hopeful performers in the golden age of television, he reinvented himself. Howard became his stage name in 1948. Simple, memorable, and destined to appear in lights. At the time of Ron's birth, Rance was serving 3 years in the U.S. Air Force. That meant discipline and duty surrounded Ron before he even learned to walk. Qualities that would quietly follow him into Hollywood. Now, while other kids were learning to ride bikes or getting dirt under their nails, Ron was learning camera angles and marks. He was tutored right there at Isola Studios, the same place where I Love Lucy made television magic, juggling lines and lessons between takes. But his parents made sure he didn't miss out on normal life entirely. Whenever he wasn't on set, he went to regular schools in Burbank, Robert Louis Stevenson Elementary, David Starr, Jordan Junior High, and later John Burroughs High School, where he graduated like any other teen, except of course with half-off America already knowing his face. But even then, his ambitions were already shifting. Acting was what the world saw, but directing, that was where his heart started to wander. The spark came early, fueled by the behind-the-scenes life he saw every day. Watching his father and the crew move like invisible architects around a story made something click for young Ron. He once reflected that Heck knew almost instinctively that storytelling from the director's chair might be his real calling. After high school, he enrolled at the University of Southern California's prestigious School of Cinematic Arts. For many, that's the dream destination. For Ron, it was just another chapter. He didn't graduate, viewed in Hollywood, diplomas don't make directors. Vision does, and Ron had plenty of that. Before Happy Days ever came calling, Ron was already racking up credits most actors twice his age would envy. His first official film role came in 1959's The Journey. From there, he started popping up everywhere on TV. He appeared in The DuPont Show with June Allison in an episode titled Child Lost and even in The Twilight Zone. Yes, that Twilight Zone. In an episode called Walking Distance, he showed up on Den as the Menace as Stewart, one of Dennis' buddies, and had guest spots on the many loves of Dobie Gillis and Cheyenne. It was a parade of guest roles and O'Neilliners. But for Ron, each one was another lesson. Every director, every set, and every script added something to his growing understanding of how stories work. Not just how to say the lines, but how to build the world those lines belong to. By the time most kids his age were just figuring out what they wanted to do in life, Ron Howard was already living it. But as much as the camera loved him, he was already starting to see beyond the frame. Because for Ron, the magic wasn't just in being seen. It was in creating what people see. So, while the world saw a fresh-faced kid with a wholesome smile, what they didn't see was the filmmaker slowly waking up inside him. The boy who would grow into one of the most respected storytellers in Hollywood history. From sitcom star to Hollywood visionary. Before Ron Howard was shouting action behind the camera, he was that wide-eyed, freckled kid stealing America's heart as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show. In 1960, at just 5 years old, he joined the cast, credited as Ronnie Howard, playing Andy Griffith's on-screen son. For 8 full seasons, audiences watched him grow up in Mayberry, a town that seemed frozen in time, where life was simple, the lessons were gentle and family came first. It was television comfort food, and Ron was right in the middle of it. But behind that innocent smile was a little boy learning how storytelling really worked. He once recalled his very first scene holding a toy turtle that he had to pretend was real and dead. He remembered Andy Griffith calmly talking him through it, showing him how to make the moment feel real. For a 5-year-old, that kind of attention wasn't just direction, it was mentorship. Ron later said that from that day, he didn't just learn to act. He learned what it meant to guide a story. The Andy Griffith Show became an American classic. Warm, wholesome, and timeless. Even though it aired during the 1960s, it felt like a love letter to a simpler era. Alongside stars like Don Knotts, Francis Bavier, and Jim Nabors, Ron became the nation's favorite kid. And when the show ended after 8 seasons, he was just another child actor. He was part of television history. But as the 60s faded, Ron was ready for something new. He found it in a small anthology segment called Love in the Television Set, which later got retitled Love in the Happy Days. That one-off role led to the opportunity that would define his young adult years, Happy Days. In 1974, Ron became Richie Cunningham, the all-American boy next door. Clean-cut, polite, endlessly optimistic. Richie was the kind of guy your parents wanted you to marry, and the total opposite of his leather jacket-wearing best friend, Fonza, played by Henry Winkler. Together, they created one of television's most iconic duos, Richie the heart and Fans the cool. And that chemistry wasn't just for the cameras. Off-screen, Ron and Henry built a real friendship that would last decades. Boothaw's Happy Days grew into a full-blown pop culture phenomenon. Ron started to feel the itch. He still loved acting, the energy, the laughter, and the connection with fans, but something deeper was calling him. That same spark that first lit Days' pal Henry Winkler. It was clever, funny, and full of heart. Everything that would later define a Ron Howard film. The 1990s only solidified his place among Hollywood's best. From the fiery tension-off backdraft to the sweeping romance of Far and Away, and the newsroom chaos of The Paper, Ron showed that he could handle any genre and still find emotion at the center of it all. Speaking to fellow Los Angeles Times, he explained that the film didn't need a disclaimer because it was, in his words, a work of fiction. He pointed out that spy thrillers don't start with disclaimers either. And thought as storytellers, they weren't claiming truth. They were exploring ideas. And while critics were divided on the movie itself, one thing was undeniable. The controversy made it massive. The Da Vinci Code became a global event, earning over $760 million at the box office, making it the biggest hit of Howard's entire career. It's ironic, really. The same film that earned him outrage from the church also gave him his biggest commercial triumph. But the calm didn't last forever. Fast forward to 2010, and Ron Howard found himself in another kind of storm. Smaller, but surprisingly intense. This time, it wasn't about religion. It was about one word. That word was GY. In the trailer for his film, The Dilemma, Vince Vaughn's character joked, "Electric cars are GI, but my parents are chaperoning the dancing." She went on to become an actress and novelist, and even in her rare interviews, she made it clear what drew them together: his deep love for stories, and hers for the way they shape people. Her lines were simple, often reduced to, "Oh, Howard," or "Oh, children, you're not eating." She once approached Happy Days creator Gary Marshall, asking if she and Tom could have a little more to do. She started playing little pranks to keep the energy light, though one in particular nearly got her in trouble. The audience went silent. Her heart dropped and Tom Bosley was furious. She remembered thinking, "Oh, I think we've gone too far," but time has a funny way of softening things. Over the years, the tension melted into genuine affection. "We had to work our way through that," Ross said later, "because I learned to love him, and we became very close friends." It's poetic, really, the TV couple that went from friction to friendship, just like any real marriage. Yet, the Happy Days drama didn't stop there. Decades after the show ended, a new kind of fight broke out. This time over money. In 2015, 5 Happy Days cast members, Anson Williams, Don Immo, Aaron Morin, Marion Ross, and the estate of Tom Bosley filed a lawsuit against CBS. Their claim was that the network had been using their likenesses when everything from lunchboxes and t-shirts to slot machines and dolls without properly compensating them. They wanted $10 million in unpaid merchandising revenue, money they felt was rightfully theirs. Ron Howard and Henry Winkler were at part of the suit. Winkler said had his own deal and supported the others, while Ron stayed out of it entirely. Scott Baio, who played Chachi, was also uninvolved because, as their attorney put it, his likeness wasn't us to the same degree as the others. CBS responded by admitting it owed the actors something, but not what they were asking for. The network claimed it only owed around $9,000 each, mostly from slot machine revenue. The cast was buying it. As Don Most pointed out, this wasn't just about Happy Days. "We think this is pervasive. Many other actors and other shows haven't gotten paid either." And just like that, the family-friendlies that once symbolized unity and laughter was suddenly tainted by lawsuits and tension. It was a reminder that even the happiest of shows had cracks behind the curtain. And for Ron Howard, those cracks had already started to widen long before the courtroom drama began. The day Ron Howard walked away, when the laughter stopped and the cameras turned off, Ron Howard made a decision that stunned everyone. He walked away from Happy Days at the height of its success. To the outside world, it looked unthinkable. He was the show's heart, its moral compass, the golden boy America had grown up with. But beneath that wholesome smile was Amon quietly wrestling with frustration, ambition, and the kind of courage it takes to leave comfort behind. When Happy Days premiered in 1974, Gary Marshall had no idea he was about to tap into something bigger than a sitcom. He was bottling nostalgia. America was hungry for the good old days. And after George Lucas's American Graffiti swept audiences off their feet, people wanted to keep living in that 1950s dream. Happy Days became that escape with its jukebox tunes, poodle skirts, leather jackets, and all. And right at the center of it was Ron Howard. He had already been a part of television history once as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show. So seeing him grow up as Richie Cunningham felt like catching up with an old friend. He wasn't just acting. He was bridging generations from black and white innocence to Technicolor cool. But as Happy Days rose in popularity, the balance on set started to shift. Henry Winkler's Fonzie, Tough guy with a heart of gold, exploded into pop culture superstardom. Kid copied